So we're looking at learning outcome 2 on managing people in organizations. And we're going to look at 4 assessment criteria here. 2.1 is describe each stage of the 7-step process for managing performance. I forgot to read out the learning outcome. So the learning outcome is know how organizations carry out performance management. So all of this is about performance management and the appraisal process. So again, 2.1, describe each stage of the 7-step process for managing performance. 2.2, using examples, explain why standards are a necessary part of performance management. Then we've got 2M1, so explain performance management and how it benefits employees, managers, and organizations. And then 2D1, the distinction is design an appraisal process, including examples of the documentation required. So again, it's up to you what grade you go for. So do the pass if you only want to do pass, do all the pass and merit if you want a merit grade, and do pass, merit, and distinction if you want to go for distinction.
Oh, distinction. I'll go for it.
Brilliant. So let's get started on this. So 2.1, so we're going to describe each stage of the 7-step process for managing performance. Now, when we do performance management, it's normally practiced quite regularly. It's like an ongoing process and it's normally a two-way conversation. So it's something that you will discuss with your manager, or if you are the management, your employees will discuss with you, your colleagues will. So these performance managements actually take place so that you can help to identify and develop any goals and objectives that might be a benefit to the team and to the company itself. So these objectives are normally more beneficial to the team rather than the person on their own, rather than the individual. So rather than having an appraisal system or a once-a-year meeting that everyone is like, oh no, we've got to do that appraisal now, we don't want to do it. It's better to just have this as an ongoing process throughout the year, because it is more beneficial when you're in touch with the management or you're in touch with your employees on a regular basis, so that you can keep an eye on what things are going and they can actually refer back to you and not be afraid of having to rush through things right at the last minute. So, to get the most out of the time and energy spent on performance management and to see any improvement among employees, managers would like to consider it as an ongoing process. So it's continuously happening, that there's always goal planning and there's always constructive feedback. So you're giving feedback to someone, but you're not giving it to them in a negative way where you're putting someone down. So even though you've got a couple of things that you might want to say that are not quite right, you'd use a sandwich approach. Just think of like an Oreo biscuit type thing, where you'd have the chocolate base on the outside, and that would be one good thing. So I'd say, if you were doing a presentation to me, I said, Vicky, that presentation was very well thought out. Then I'd say, but towards the middle, you sort of lost track. And then I'd say, but on the last few slides, you really brought yourself back and you presented very well. So you sort of like have a good thing, a medium, like a not so good thing, and a very good thing at the end. So you're sandwiching it.
Okay.
Yeah. So there are 7 steps to maximize the impact of your performance management program, and we're going to go through those now. So step 1 is start off with the goals. So plan what the goals are. Plan what the ultimate goal is that would be the best outcome for your performance management for your company. Create goals that are clear and make sure the objectives are clear as well, and that they are quite objective. They're not just focused on you, but they're focused on the company, what the needs are of that. Make sure that you focus them and align them towards the business strategy that you're working towards, that they're actually beneficial to what you're doing personally, but also to the what your company is trying to focus on. And make them measurable and trackable. So put down dates of when you're going to go back and review it and see, how do I measure my success in this? Is it by getting a qualification at the end of it? Am I getting the skills that I'm looking to train towards? How are you measuring it? Step 2 is to create an actionable goal achievement plan. So you're using the goals in step 1 that you've already established, and that you're going to talk to the manager and the employees. They're going to talk to each other, and they're going to work together to collaborate and create a plan of action. So they'll identify any major expectations they have and any issues that might come up as well. So they look at short-term and long-term goals, then they discuss how it's going to be done, and they'll also see how well it will go and if there's any challenges that might come on. Say if you need specialist equipment further down the line, how are you going to overcome that? So you just sort of like discuss it as a team and see how we're going to get to where I want to go.
Okay.
So step 3, make it a process. So set goals, plan, monitor, and have feedback and get coaching. All of this type of support will help the employee to get to the goal that they're going for. So having this as a continuous process where you're constantly, so if you're the manager here and I'm your employee and you set me a task and you said, Afsha, I want you to go out and learn about, get an advanced experience in Excel, then I would go about, set about doing things. But throughout it, rather than leaving me alone for a full year and let me just get on with it, you'd come back, you'd talk to me constantly, you'd talk about every couple of weeks, you'd coach me, you'd see how I'm getting on. You might ask another member of staff to check my expertise or work with me. So do it as like a feedback loop, as a constant loop that you're always in touch with each other. So at the end of the year, so I know that I'm accountable and I need to do what you've told me to do. So I'm not running around, say, if we were going to have a meeting in December and saying, oh my goodness, I've got to meet with my manager now. What should I do? I better really get on this. Because you know that you're constantly under the eye of having to do the process that you need to do. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So track your progress regularly. So either it's yours or your employees. Give feedback, make adjustments. If there's any issues, any obstacles, try and overcome them. And then also prepare for contingencies. So if there's something goes wrong, what can you do to come out of that situation? What can you do if funding dries up or if somebody has to go on sick leave and they're not able to do what they were meant to do? So see if there's any backup plans. Step 5 is ensure objective by using a variety of sources. So the manager themselves can't be the single source of information when it comes to performance management, because you're just doing like a very small view and it's going to be very biased and it's going to be a very small feedback loop where you're just having one person telling you things. Getting information and feedback from other employees, teammates, customers, clients, people that come into deliveries, somebody that you're dealing with on a regular basis. So if you wanted to find out information about me, then you can ask a whole load of other people that work with me as well, and that we can all work together to give good feedback to help me and support me with my process. And the same with the employee that you might have under you. Then practice consistent documentation. So now this is something that I can be quite bad at when it comes to training and so on, because I do a lot of training. I do try and keep up to date and go for this course, that course, do a bit of research, try and find a bit of information. So I'll do it, but then I'll forget to write down what I actually did. So rather than writing it down on my on the documentation that I've got for my performance management, I'll probably have done a coaching session with a senior colleague, and then I'll have forgotten to write it down that I did 4 or 5 hours with that person, or I went and I did some research, or I've done a course and I got a certificate in this. Human memory can be unreliable. You can forget what you've done, especially if you're trying to note things down a year after you've done them. So make sure that you're consistently writing down and documenting anything that you have done as you're doing it. It's a lot more effective. And then the final step in this, you got to build performance management into the company culture. So it is, now this sentence is true where it says it's widely acceptable that annual reviews only happen one time. And it is, there are a lot of companies that will just do an annual review. But what I found is that they're not that effective. you're out of touch with your employees. You only get one opportunity, one meeting. You might have an hour with your employee at the end of the year where you're going to discuss things, but I don't think that's enough time. And then for the rest of the year, they're just left alone to do whatever needs to do, focus on their targets. But normally, it won't happen. If you give me a set of targets and say, go and work on them for the next year and we'll meet again next June, most likely I'll probably put them off until right at the end when I know I've got to do them. So if you've got a performance management system where you're doing it, say, once every 3 months, so you've got 4 meetings a year, you know that you're going to be in touch with your employees. The management will know exactly what's going on, and you'll have a good feedback system as well, where you can work together, see how well things are going, and see what could be fixed. So you're just giving each of the support on a more regular basis. So that was 2.1. Do you have any questions you'd like to ask?
No.
Okay. Yep. So let's go on to 2.2. So using examples, explain why standards are a necessary part of performance management. So we do, in a work environment, regardless of where you work, you're going to have performance standards. So if you're working in retail, you're going to have a standard where there's a particular way that you talk to your customers, that you're not shouting at them or you're not looking down at them, or, you're not ignoring. There's certain things that you are allowed to do and you're not allowed to do. And it's the same for in offices. That you've got certain standards that you've got to keep up with. It might be something to do with how you dress, how you behave, health and safety, but there are standards everywhere. So these performance standards will look at your behaviors and your actions, and they'll also look at how the job is being done. Then they'll look at the results that they're getting, and if they're actually focusing on the job performance, if they're actually meeting the performance standards. So you've got to make sure that while you're working, you are actually meeting your targets and you are meeting your standards to be effective as an employee.
Okay.
So if you know that I'm going into work today and I'm in a call center and I need to be having at least 30 calls a day, I've got an 8-hour shift, I should be handling this many calls and this is how I should behave. You've got your targets and you know what your standards are, and you can work towards achieving those. If you don't know what your standards are, then you probably wouldn't be achieving your targets, or you wouldn't even be quite effective at work. So these standards tell an employee what a good job looks like and what a good job performance looks like. And these standards are just there to communicate to you what the expectations of you are in your role from your management. Now,
2. So this basically means that you set certain goals for these people to have.
Yeah.
Yeah? I don't know.
Yeah, so 2.1 was where you're meeting with someone. So you could be meeting, so if I was your manager and I'm coming and meeting you, and I'll say, Victoria, you've got this goal, that goal, and that goal. I'll give you 2 or 3 goals, and you'll probably have a certain amount of time where you're meeting them. So it might be to up your sales. It might be to go and learn a new particular program that I've asked you to do. So those are the goals that you get set to manage your performance.
Okay.
It's sort of like for your development. 2.2 is just talking about where we're on now, is what sort of standards are in place so that you do good performance management, so that when you're actually physically carrying out your work, that you're actually working towards the goals and targets that the actual company has got for you.
Okay. Yeah.
So again, like certain behaviors will be things like being friendly, being helpful, being courteous, arriving to work on time, not using bad language. These type of things within a normal workplace are standard to have. So performance standards can be based on the position. So they're not based on you as an individual. They're not different for you or different for me. We might be working in the same environment. But it doesn't mean that you've got different standards and I've got different standards. Is based on the position that we're working in, what our job role is. So we could be doing the same role and we've got the same standards to follow. Standards are observable, specific indicators of success. What that means is that these standards, where they're saying you should have good behavior and you should arrive on time and you should speak to all the customers in a friendly manner, is that if your manager sees that you're not doing these, they can pull you out and saying, actually, you're arriving to work late every day, or I've seen you be rude to 3 different customers on this day, that day, and that day. You know, those type of things. So they can pull you up and they can say that, are you being successful in your job or not? Standards should actually be meaningful, reasonable, and attainable. So they should be meaningful. They should actually mean something towards the role that you're doing, what your position is. They should be reasonable, so that they should be able for you to actually do them. So reasonable and attainable. So they're not out of the ordinary. They're not something extraordinary where you know you can't achieve them. They have to be reasonable. They should be fully satisfactory. So when you've been trained and you've gone through all that initial process, you should be able to know exactly what your standards are and how to achieve those. And then you should know things like quantity, quality, time, cost, safety. So you should be aware of the basic things that you need to do to achieve your standards. So there's a couple of examples that I'm going to go through now, just so that it makes it a little bit more clear about what we're talking about. So I might be reading through this, so I apologize if it gets boring. So example 1, a team leader can't speak to them. A team leader might have a performance standard which says holds their people accountable for delivering results. So this team leader will hold all the colleagues that are under her accountable. So she'll make sure that these people are delivering the results that the company needs. So great. However, it is not specific and it's difficult to measure. So she's saying that my job now, I'm a team leader, I have to hold all these people that are working for me. They need to be accountable, they need to deliver the results, but it's not actually saying how they should be delivering the results. What are you using to measure? Is it how many customers you serve? Is it how much money you make? What sort of sales you're making? So it's hard to measure. So to clarify this, you need to add some guidelines. So you can put down some performance issues. You can keep a diary note to record your performance. And then all employees who don't meet expectations 2 months in a row will have a performance improvement plan put in place for them. So another example is a numeric target, such as achieving 6 customers per hour. It sounds really good. So you're in a shop, you're saying that, yeah, each person who's working today, you need to serve 6 customers an hour. But your employee, you don't actually control, so you're working on the shop floor. You can't control how many people come into the shop. What if there's only 3 people that come in per hour and there's 4 of you that are serving? So some of you will have had 1 person to serve, and then some of you will have had none. So you can't control how many people come into your shop per hour. So it's challenging, and it can be an issue with putting down like a number of customers that you have to do per hour. And then also, it's not fair on the people who are working part-time, because they're only doing a couple of hours a day. And they might come in on high peak times, like where after school and after about 5 p.m. where lots of people are off work and they're coming into shops. Or they might come in very early in the morning when there's not many people who are coming into the shop. So this number target that gets put in place can be hard to control. So it's a difficult performance management system to control here. So when we're looking at establishing performance standards, we're going to look at this little image here. Now on this, we're just looking at strategies and competencies. So these things, don't be afraid of what, it looks a little complicated, but it's not. So we're looking at what the criteria is. So what is the criteria? What are you actually looking at for the appraisal? What sort of points are you pointing out? What do you want to check the performance against? Then you check in the reliability. You're seeing, is it consistent? Are we able to do these performance? So if it's saying that Vicky should see 10 customers an hour, how can she control this? Maybe we've not had 10 customers per hour walk in the shop. Maybe we've only had one person walk in. And then criteria deficiency. So what are the actual performance areas that aren't measured? So is there anything lacking in there? So you've got your actual performance, but is everything being measured against that? Or is it some unrealistic standards? And then strategic relevance, you've got your performance standards and they're linked to your company's goals. So are these relevant? Are these actually working towards you with that? So in a nutshell, all you've got when it comes to performance standards, they have to be valid, they have to be reliable, they have to actually be achievable for you to actually work towards. If it's setting goals up that are already too high or above the station where someone can't control what they do, you're setting people up to fail. So that will be an issue. So they have to be something that can be achieved. And then that's all it was for 2.1 and 2.2. Do you have any questions about 2.2? Was it clear, or do you want me to go over anything?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I will go over it myself as well. So if there's something that I still don't understand, I'll ask.
Yeah. So you can always email me or ask me. Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
Oh, brilliant. So that was that. And now we're going to go and look at 2M1 and 2D1. So we're going to look at how a performance management can benefit employees, managers and organizations. And then we're going to look at how a appraisal process is created. That is this one here. Now these are actually bunched together, but I'll tell you what the difference is for both of them. So this is for 2M1. So we're just going to talk about what performance management is. So according to Berkeley's Human Resources, performance management is an ongoing process of communication between your supervisors and the employees, and this happens throughout the year. So it's in support of, it's just there to make sure that your strategic objectives of the company, of the organization are being met. So that's what you're getting put to. It's nothing to do with you personally. It's always to make sure that you're working towards the goals and the achievement that the company wants to meet, that you're meeting their expectations, and that you're looking at any areas that are not being met and that you're identifying them, and then you're getting people to work towards them. You're giving people feedback, and then you're looking at the results of what they have done. Has it been a good job? Has it not been a good job? Do you need to change something? Then you've got the nature of performance management. So you've got a few points on here. So you've got performance management requires a multifaceted approach linked to organizational strategy. So it needs to be multiple approaches that you go towards that, not just the one. You got SMART objectives, so specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and what time, how long is it going to take you to achieve those. So you've got objectives that are will work well and will actually go towards what the organizational goals are. Then you've got regular performance feedback, and this is especially crucial for monitoring how the progress is going. So again, rather than having one performance feedback system in place where you only meet once a year, do it every few weeks, do it every few months where you're meeting constantly. Then you've got the employee's voice and perceived fairness, and how these are critical for performance feedback. So you're listening to what your employee is saying, and you're checking to see, are you got fair expectations on this person? And then you've got a lot of biases when you look at performance ratings. So it might just be, really depends on how many people you've got involved in the process. If it's just you and your employee, then you're going to be more biased because it'll be your opinions and what you think only. But if you've got a number of people within that feedback system where you're looking at all of their performance and getting reviews from other people, colleagues, clients about what sort of how they're meeting their targets and so on, then that's a much better way to be less biased. And then why do we actually do performance management? So according to Boswell and Bodrow in 2000, the performance management system actually have two purposes. Is to be evaluating and developing. So the evaluative functions include the use of performance appraisals for salary administration, promotion decisions, retention or termination decisions. Are they going to keep you? Are they going to fire you? What sort of things? Are you going to get promoted? Are you going to get a higher salary? They're there to recognize the individual's performance. So you can have good performance, but then they can also recognize if you had poor performance. And then they're going to conduct this evaluative function. They're going to do an appraisal and they're going to take on the role of a judge. So they're going to just check, you're appraising you, they're seeing how you're working. So evaluative functions focus primarily on differentiating between people. So what you might get might be slightly different to what I might get because they're focusing on the person as a different person with different targets, because we're not going to have the same positive performance, we're not going to have the same negative performance. We're going to have different things that we're good at and different things that we're not good at. And then the job of this is to focus on the person and see how you can help them to achieve their goals. Then you've got developmental. So developmental functions include the identification of individual training needs. So they're looking at you, they're seeing there's one person here, there's Dave over there, and there's Margaret over there. Let's see what sort of training they need. They'll observe them, they check them, look at their performance, look at what sort of feedback they're getting, what their performance is against the standards, and then just see what sort of training this person might need. They look at the strengths and the weakness and they'll work from there. So for this development function, the appraiser takes on the role of a coach and a mentor, and then they only focus on that person on a one-to-one basis. So if you're the manager, you're going to look at, for example, Dave needs to focus on his customer language skills. He's not good at customer performance. He's quite abrupt. He's short with them. So you're going to work as a coach where you might do an hourly session with that person and just show them how to speak to people in a good manner, or you might be a mentor. Now, a coach is something that coaching sessions are something that is short term, so something that will probably take a couple of hours or a couple of weeks maybe. A mentor is something that will last a lot longer, so think long term, like you're meeting someone once every week, but you're meeting for 6 months or 7 months and you're working together. And then we've got different perspectives on performance management. So Colleen in 2006 has highlighted lots of issues that managers and employees can have. So not only do managers dislike carrying out performance appraisals, but many admit that it is the most dreaded task in their calendar. So too often it leads to a shallow discussion with both parties colluding to meet the organization's prescribed administrative procedure, and in doing so, avoiding the most fundamental issues of performance improvement. So all this is saying that the managers hate performance appraisals as well, because they find that it's a little bit fake, that you just get together, you don't really get deep, you don't really discuss what sort of issues you have, and you just sort of like end up agreeing on the odd target here or there just for the sake of agreeing on it. And it might not even be what you need to work on, but you just want to get it over and done with. So, and then according to Armstrong and Barron in 2004, they say that performance appraisal has a reputation as a punitive, top-down control device. It's an unloved system, and the performance management is a holistic, total approach to engaging everyone in the organization in a continuous process. to improve everyone and their performance, and thereby the performance of the organization as a whole. So these people are saying that appraisal systems are just there to control you, to get everybody to go towards the performance that you're wanting as an organization, but they feel it's like a controlling device. So this is 2M1, where you're just talking about why performance managements are taking place. So you're explaining performance management and what sort of benefits it has. Are you okay with this section so far?
I had a little bit of a hard time to understand the first few things.
Yeah.
Like, what's the difference? Like the first slide we came on.
Oh, the first things, yeah. So on the first slides, when we go onto it, because we're looking at, first we're looking at...
When we went, how to explain this? Like, it was the one that we're just on, I think 2.D1.
In this slide here?
No.
2.1, 2.2?
The one we're just on. But
oh, yeah.
The first slide of that one.
Oh, okay. Let's go back.
Yeah.
Do you mean what is performance management? That one?
Next one, probably.
The nature of performance management. Should I go forward?
Yes, please.
Just to tell me when it is. So why do we have performance? Yeah.
So the difference between evaluating and...
So there's two, in simple terms, the best way to explain this is when they're asking why do we actually have performance management, there's two ways, there's two reasons. The first one is to evaluate you, and the second one is to develop you. So evaluation just means when they're checking you, they're checking your performance, they're checking how you work, how you're meeting a target. So they're checking your job performance, what you do at work as a whole. They're seeing, is Vicky doing a good job? Should we give her a promotion? Should we give her more money? Should we keep her in our job? Should we fire her? Do we need to, put her down for good performance? Do we need to put her down for bad performance? So in a way, evaluation just means that they're focusing on you as a whole, as a person. They're just looking at you and how you work.
Because it was very similar to the development one.
Yeah, and then developers, they've looked at you now and they've evaluated you. So the development is the second step after evaluation. Now they've looked at you, they've seen how you work, and then they're deciding, how do we develop her? How do we get Vicky to do these certain things that we want to keep her in our job? We want her to meet our targets. How do we get her to do that? How do we get her to get good performance? Or she's got good performance already, we want her to improve her performance. So they'll check what sort of training you might need. So if there's some areas that you might not be doing great in, they'll see, okay, this is the training that we need to give her, and this will help her work better. It'll help her serve more customers, or it'll help her do this particular thing faster. So just imagine if you're working in a restaurant and you're making drinks. You might be making them nice, but you're making them too slow. So they're going to see what sort of training they can give you to speed you up. So in that type of aspect, they're just looking at what they can do to help you develop and give you training. Okay. And then also what this little section on here, so for the development function, the appraiser takes on the role of coach and mentor. That means your manager, who is also known as your appraiser, also known as a person who keeps an eye on your job performance, this person will actually do the training for you. They'll actually step up and they'll say, right, I'm going to go and train her. I'm going to coach her. I'm going to mentor her. It might be something that will take a week and you're fine, or it might be something that's a long process where you need to learn lots of different systems, and then they'll teach you all these different things. Does that make better sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't be worried to tell me if it doesn't, because then I can go over it again.
No, I just find it hard to understand the difference, but now I get it. The first one, evaluation, is basically they just check in how you're doing, what in that position, what can they do for you.
Yeah.
And development is, if you have any issues, they will coach you and mentor you.
Yes, 100%, and they'll just train you and help you. Yeah, I'll go on to There you go. So we've done that, and now we're going to go on the distinction section. Now the distinction section is design an appraisal process for here. So this just tells us how an appraisal process. Have you ever had an appraisal done? Or have you ever known anybody that's been in work in like a school system or in an office where they get like a yearly meeting and they just talk about what they've been doing all year?
No.
So an appraisal is something like, for example, you're working in a business now, you're working in a company. Now you're an employee there. Every year they will come and they'll say, right, Victoria, I want to set up a meeting with you. And they'll have once a year, it happens once a year. It should happen more than that, and a lot of companies are doing it more now. But it'll just be a time for you to go in. You're getting appraised at that time. So at that time, they're just checking how you're working, what your standards are. Have you got any issues? Do they have any problems with your work? Do they want to say well done to you? Or do you have any problems with your work? Or do you want to do something that you're not sure about? Say if you want to get more experience in a particular task or some software, you want some training. You've got that time in that meeting where you're one-to-one, it's just the two of you. And you can just talk about how you're feeling at work and what sort of things you feel that you need to do a better job. Is that okay? Does that explain it? So now for this question, if you choose to do the distinction sections, then you're actually going to design an appraisal process. These next slides will just show you how to design it. So we're going to look at process design. So an appraisal process design, an appraisal process execution, how you're actually going to, you're designing it first and how you're actually going to implement it, how you're going to do it, and then what the role of the manager is. So designing an appraisal, you're expected to meet lots of conflicts and lots of objectives. So when you're dealing with you've got your one manager, you've got 20 people who are working in your team. Now you've got to try and have a good conversation with each of these people, and you need to identify what areas they're good at and what areas you want them to work on. So it can be quite conflicting and it can be quite stressful for the manager to do these. So in lots of organizations, appraisals are actually set there to fulfill different functions. So you, in that meeting, you're giving feedback and you're getting feedback from your employee. You're coaching them, you're giving them good ideas, you're helping them through certain things, you're setting goals, you're helping them to develop their skills. Some people might want to discuss how much pay they've got. There might be some legal documentation that you need to get signed. You might need some passport documentation. You might need the DBS, like the CRB where they check your criminal records if you're working with vulnerable people and so on. And you might have to compare some people to others and say your standards are falling low. You both joined at the same time. You both had the same training. And say that you need to be in the same sort of comparison as the other employees. You might need to tell someone, I'm sorry, but we can't keep you on. Or you might say to someone, yeah, we're happy with your performance. We're going to give you a pay rise. So appraisals are there as one big meeting where you're discussing everything really. So an execution is when appraisal is done to all employees. So it's for every single person, regardless of what role they are. The only reason you'd get out of having an appraisal is if you've just joined and you'd probably be put down for the next year's appraisal instead. So it's done to them. So it's for everyone. So it sets out the criteria for the performance that needs to be done. So you're doing a performance appraisal, you're the manager, you're speaking to your 20 employees, to the people that are working in your team, and you're setting every single one of those targets. You're telling them exactly what their expectations are, what they're expected to do, and what your objectives are. And then the manager's role. So line managers, they're actually there to support the colleagues in a way. They're there so that you've got enough support and enough management there to keep an eye on everyone, and also to offer a good management feedback. So some management have the skills to do good appraisals and some don't, because they've not really had to do it, or they're not good at handling difficult conversations, or they're not good at conflict. So, you're either good at doing them or you're not either good at doing them. So it really is something that even managers need to be trained in, and how to carry out perform appraisals, because you might be good at judging performance, but then you might not be good at handling any issues where maybe you have to say to someone, if you don't improve your performance, you're going to be put on a performance plan. And then if you can't meet those targets, you might have to be laid off. You might not be able to work for us anymore. Some people find that type of situation hard to talk about. So again, training is very important here. So regardless if you're a manager or an employee, you're all having to do some type of training to meet your standards. So employees' performance, it can't really be measured objectively, to be honest, or even fairly. So it's all on your manager's judgment, and there are things that you can measure objectively. Like if somebody's coming in late every single day, you know that they're not punctual. That's something you can measure. But if you're talking about other things where they're getting the job done, but it might not be as fast as the others, or it might be in a slightly different process to some of the other people who work with them. So that's purely judgmental. So the manager's perception of an employee's performance, it might not always be valid. So they might have lack of information, they might not see all of their performance, they might have just walked past and seen somebody blow their fuse and form a judgment, but they might not see what might have led to it, what might have been the situation, or what could have actually happened. Was somebody winding them up, or was a system that wasn't working? What was actually going on? It's just that very biased information. They can also be biased against a person, because we're not in an ideal world. We're not in a place where everybody likes everyone. You might have a like to someone, but you also have a dislike to someone. So you're probably forming judgments based on what your own personal feelings are. And then again, managers might not always be the best people to support employees. You might need somebody else to step in and do a bit of coaching and mentoring and training for another employee. So we're going to look at improving the effectiveness of performance appraisal. So they should be simple, they should be quite regular, and you should have decent discussions. So it should be quality discussions. They're not there to ask about how your family were or what you're doing on the weekend. They're actually there to focus on work. So a good quality discussion needs to happen. We need a committed and capable manager, somebody who is committed to looking after their team members, and also is very capable of making judgments and actually helping their team members, their colleagues, go through the steps in a good way with good support. They should have strong leadership. They should also be able to match their goals with the organization goals. So with the business goals. So if the business goals is to make profit of a certain amount of money, you've got to try and set your employee goals to match that, so that you're working towards achieving that amount. Make sure it's integrated within the culture of your work environment. So what is the culture of your work environment? What sort of systems do you use? What sort of processes do you use? Make sure that what you're choosing to do, how you're choosing to support your employees, actually works with the culture of the work environment that you're doing. Tailor it to your employees. So change it, chop it, adapt it. Make sure that what you're talking about with each employee actually suits them, actually is at their level. So you're not just doing a one-size-fits-all approach to every single person. Someone might only need 10 minutes in a performance appraisal, and you're like, yeah, you need to do this, that, and the other. Just point it out to them, and you're done. Other people might need a little bit more explaining or a little bit more hand-holding. So you've got to tailor what you're doing to your employees. Use technology. So make sure that your performance system, once upon a time, everything was all paper-based. where you're filling out pieces of paper and you're passing in, getting it signed from the manager and then the line manager. We've agreed on these goals and so on. But now you can actually just do all of that online. So use the systems that you've got. And then monitoring your systems is easier as well. So you can go back, you're not looking through a filing cabinet with 20,000 odd pieces of paper in it. Then just go in, search under your employee's name, find out what their targets and goals are, look at the development, the forms that they filled in, and then you can just work off that, and it's a lot easier. But is this okay so far? Do you want me to go over anything while we're on this section?
No, it's okay.
Yeah. Then you just got a performance management cycle. Nice, simple. So you plan what you're going to talk about, you monitor it, see how it's going on. Is it being met? Is it not being met? Do you need to change anything? Develop your systems. Do you need to do any training? What sort of things, activities should take place? Rate it. Is it good? Is it not good? So this is more like evaluating. So you're just looking back and seeing the activities that we've done, the training that we've done. Was it good? Was it beneficial? Was it bad? What should we have done different? And then if someone's doing something really good, then reward them. Give them certificates and prizes. I remember in one of my first jobs, I used to work in a camera shop, and they started getting out a system where if we were to do a particular amount of sales, then we would get high street vouchers. And at the end of the month, we'd end up having a certain amount of high street vouchers, and we really wanted to push those sales. We really wanted to do certain things just so that we'd have that extra reward of having £20, £30 extra to spend out of our wages. It'll be a bit of a luxury. So it was nice it's always nice having a reward system in place. And then it just leads you back into the planning, so it's just a circle. It's like a cycle of performance. So planning means setting your performance expectations, set down the goals for everyone, monitor it, so measure their performance, give them feedback, see how their progress is going. Develop means you're going to increase the capacity of performance, so you're going to give them training, you're going to give them assignments, you're going to help them get new skills, and you're just going to take on a responsibility to help them work at a higher standard. Rating means to evaluate your employee. So check what their performance is. Are they meeting the goals? Is there anything that needs to be changed? Go ahead, summarize it, change the plan, do it in accordance to how that person is doing. And then reward, just give them incentives, give them a reward, give them something like, even if it is a Friday night out once in a while, once a month meeting, or a Christmas party, or an end of summer party, that type of thing. Reward your employees. Then you got human resources management, so HRM Performance Relationship. So somebody called Applebaum in 2000 argued that organizational performance is best served by employees who have the ability to do the work, and that they have the necessary skills and knowledge, and that they're actually motivated to do the work so that they get the opportunity to arrange their skills. So he's saying that to get your goals as an organization, as a business, you need people who are capable of working, who are motivated and are actually happy about the opportunities that they are being given. And then you've got performance management models. You've got competitive assessment and coaching and development. So competitive assessment is where you evaluate your employees against what their goals are, and then against each other as well. So it's competitive because you're being checked against what your goals are, but you and me might be checked against each other, so it's more competitive. So it'll help us compete with each other, and it'll give us like, oh, Victoria made this many sales this month. I want to make sure I get past her. And then you'll think, I made this many sales, I made this much money. I want to make sure that no one can do better than me. So you're rewarding the top performance. You're getting a high performance, but then you're sort of like finding out who the poor performers are, and you're weeding them out, possibly taking them out of your team. Then you've got coaching and development. So this model, it focuses on, you look at what your employees' strengths and weaknesses are, and then you just coach them and develop them and give them the right type of training to work on their own strengths and develop their weaknesses. So to create a good performance management system that has the best impact, human resources, the people that are in charge of all your pay and if they keep you in or not, they try and bridge the gap of what is being done and what is being expected. So there's a list of expectations on one side, and then there's a list of things that are actually being done. They want those two to match. So a lot of organizations, they don't actually place a high priority on the activities. So they don't give a high priority to help employees to identify what their performance gaps are and to try and overcome them. And there should be a system in place where you can check what your skills are and then try and overcome any weaknesses or any areas that you're not sure about. But Bloomberg and Pringle in 1982, they provided a formula for performance. Now, they say that performance is made up of these three things. It's made up of your individual attributes, it's made up of your work effort, and it's made up of your organizational support. So how skilled you are, what sort of effort you put in, and how much support you're getting from work. How are you so far, Vicky? Because I know it's quite a lot of information to put in all at once.
It's okay.
Yeah. Brilliant. Now, just a few more slides and then we'll be done. So you're going to build a performance management process. So to go on a career development. So you've got to empower your employees. So when your employees are involved with their job roles and their careers, they actually feel more engaged. They feel like they've got more responsibility and they want to take on a lot more. They want to get the initiative and they want to set their own goals and they're happy. So a happy employee really does work much better. So if they feel important, if they're getting a good role and that they feel like they're being listened to, then they're feeling empowered and they're a lot happier and they are going to be more productive for you at work. And then we've got to build a dialogue-based culture. So have conversations, just converse with each other, talk to each other on a constant basis. And then you're going to look at different type of performance. So just look about what sort of performance they have and give them compensation in that. So if they're doing good, give them incentives. You know, if they're selling a lot, give them rewards. That's that type of system over here. So teach your managers to be coaches. So even if you're a manager, you still need to go ahead and coach your employees. Give them information, give them feedback. It really is helpful. Use technology. So rather than doing everything paper-based, make sure that you're using the systems you've got, makes things faster. And then also look at the way you grade your performance. So your grading skills have to be realistic. And you've got to really think about what sort of scales are you looking at to rate somebody's performance. Then again, make sure that your employees are being developed. So, you know, they're aware. So employers are quite aware that if they invest in their staff, if they've got a good system of staff in place, they're going to retain them a lot longer, especially if they're giving them development opportunities. So the Chartered Management Institute defines personal development as, so it's where you're getting your aims and objectives, your goals, and you know where you want to go. You've got, you're assessing your capabilities against what is realistic. You're identifying what your needs are, what your skills are, and then you're also looking at the right development opportunities and activities to get to the goals that you want to achieve. And again, so establish the purpose, find out what you want to do and why you want to do it. Identify the needs, what is it you need? Look at any different opportunities you've got. Sort out an action plan, so how are you going to do it? Start doing the developments or the training or the courses. Put down your outcomes. How is it going? Did you do well? Did you achieve it? Was it completed? And then review and evaluate. So look back, think about how did all of this go? Was it good for you? Was it bad for you? And did it help you achieve what you wanted to achieve? So we've gone through there. And that's it. That's all we wanted to talk about with this. Let me just, we do actually have a handout which just tells you for the distinction question how to set up an appraisal process. And this handout is on just the Moodle. If you look under Learning Outcome 2.
I'll just on the website.
Yeah.
I still don't have that.
Do you not have access yet?
I have access, but there's nothing on it.
Do you not have any of this that I've got here?
Mm-mm.
So when you click, okay, let me just turn the recording off first.